If you've ever made a crochet piece that ended up much bigger or much smaller than you wanted it to be, this is the video for you to watch, because I'm going to be talking about things that could have gone wrong, the mistakes you probably made that made your crochet piece end up being much bigger. In today's video, if you ever wondered what went wrong, why is this piece so big, I don't even know what happened, you're going to know what happened by the time you're done watching this video. If this is your first time here, my name is Kauthar. I'm Nigeria's crochet queen, and this is the channel for you if you want to become a better crocheter. I'm sharing helpful crochet resources on a weekly basis so that you can become better at your crochet craft. I'm also sharing with you tips on how you can monetize your crochet skills. So if that's something you're interested in, click on the subscribe button right now before we begin today's video. Like I've said, I'm going to be telling you 4 reasons why your crochet piece could have ended up being bigger or smaller than you wanted it to, so that the next time you want to make a crochet piece, you're going to take into consideration these 4 things if you want your crochet piece to come out being the perfect size. This is the kind of video that you want to watch with full concentration, because there are things you want to take note of for when next you're crocheting clothes, and in no particular order. The first reason why your crochet piece could have been bigger or smaller than you wanted it to be is that you were working without measurements. When it comes to making clothes, I am like very surprised. It's always surprising to me when I find out that somebody is crocheting a piece of clothing and they don't have measurements. Like, what exactly is your plan? Like, I like imagine you go to your tailor, you want them to make you a dress, and they just ask you for your fabric, and that's the end. Are you not going to be worried, like, hello, no measurements, how do you want to make this dress for me if you don't have my measurements? It's not possible. Don't It is not possible to make any crochet clothing without measurements, and you are expecting it to fit perfectly. Are you a magician? No. Are you a witch? No. If you want to make a piece of crochet cloth, you must have the measurements. If it's yours, you must have your own measurements. If you're making it for somebody, you must have the person's measurements. If the person doesn't have their own measurements, you probably want to ask for their size so that you can use that size to get measurements online. You can also ask for one of their existing clothes to be sent to you so that you use that cloth, like you measure the cloth to know their own measurements. If you do not have measurements, don't even bother. Like, you just want to waste your time, really, because you're not going to have anything to compare what you're doing with. Like, you don't even know if what you're doing is big or small, because you don't know what it is supposed to be in the first place. Again, I'm so surprised. I feel like this is basic. Like, you should never get started making a clothing item if you don't have measurements. It's not even, I don't even know. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I've seen some of you say you're crocheting something and you don't know what measurement it should be. I've heard it a lot of times. That's why I'm including it in this video. If I've never heard it, I'll think about, everybody should know that you need measurements to crochet something. Even people that don't crochet, they know that you need measurements if you want to make something. Then some of you tell me that, oh, your customer is not sending the measurements and all. Somebody is not sending you measurements, that means they are not serious. I do not care what it is. They are not serious, because how else are you supposed to make the clothes fit them? If a customer says they cannot send you their measurements, ask for their size, maybe a size 6, a size 8. If they also say they cannot send you their size, ask them to send you one of their clothes that they like the fit of, so you can measure that cloth to get the measurements. If they say they can't send you that as well, offer to send them a tape measure so they can use the tape measure to take their measurements, or go to a tailor around them. If the customer now says they cannot do any of the above, if they've paid you, refund their money, because you're probably going to still refund them at the end of the day if you make the crochet cloth and it doesn't fit them. They are not going to excuse you. They are not going to say, okay, I didn't send her measurements, so let me just forgive her. No, they won't forgive you. They'll say, oh, this clothes does not fit me. You're not good at what you do. Give me my money back or redo it. So don't even bother yourself. If you don't have measurements, just do not begin the crochet projects. All right. That's why most of my own crochet designs, I always make it for myself first, because I have my measurements. Like, even if I forget my measurements, I can always take it. So when I want to make a crochet project, like impulsively, like I've not thought about it before, it's just an impulse decision, I'll just decide to make it for myself because I have my own measurements and I can just proceed with my measurements. If you're one of those that have been crocheting, even if you're making it for yourself, you must have your own measurements. Either you measure yourself or you measure one of your clothes that you like, so that's the measurements that will guide you as you're crocheting. I feel like I've spoken a lot about these first points, but yeah, I hope you understand how important it is for you to have measurements. Otherwise, just don't begin the crochet clothing project. Now, the second reason why your crochet clothing project comes out bigger than you want it to is that you do not make a swatch. Some of you are going to be tired of hearing about swatch by now, but making a swatch is so important, and I'll tell you why. Now you have your measurements. You know that I want my crochet fabric to measure 40 inches, and you know that with crochet your stitch count is what will determine the measurement of your crochet fabric. Now that you know I want 40 inches, your swatch is what will tell you how many stitches would give you that 40 inches of fabric, so that you know the exact number of stitches you should have in your project. Okay, so when you make a swatch, like I've said before, your swatch is you just doing like 20 stitches and working that for like 7 to 10 rows. So if you're making the piece with double crochet, you're just going to work like maybe 20, 23 double crochets, and you're going to do that for like 7 rows. Then when you're done with the swatch, you're going to measure the swatch so you can see what the swatch measures. If you measure your 20 stitches that you have in your swatch, and maybe that's like 5 inches, and you are going to 40 inches, it means that you want to do 80 stitches to arrive at the 40 inches that you want to do. So again, basically the swatch is how you're going to be able to determine how many stitches will give you your desired measurements, because now you know the measurements, but the swatch is how you're going to be able to tell what stitch count do you need to have in your crochet fabric to arrive at that measurements that you want to arrive at. Okay, so that is the second thing. I know that a lot of you don't do swatch. You just take out your hook and you are going to start chaining. You just look for a random number in your head. Okay, let me just chain 50. You don't even know what 50 stitches will measure. You don't know what 50 stitches will measure, so you don't know if the 50 stitches will be your own exact measurements. You don't know if the 50 stitches will be smaller. You don't know if it will be bigger. You're just working on with 50 stitches, and that's like the recipe for wasting your time, right? Because you are just doing 50 stitches. You don't know what 50 stitches will measure. But when you do the swatch, you can say for a fact that, oh, this 50 stitches is going to measure this. This is the measurement I want, so I'm ready to proceed with my project. The third reason why your crochet piece is probably bigger or smaller than you want it to be is that you changed your hook or your yarn. Most likely changing your hook size. Like when you do a swatch, I've already spoken about doing a swatch. Some of you are going to do the swatch with a 3mm hook. You are now making your project with a 4mm hook. What is your plan? Explain to me in the comments, why do you do something like that? Because if you change your hook size, the size of your crochet fabric will change. So if you've already made your swatch with a 3mm hook, it means that the measurement you have is for a 3mm hook. If you want to change your hook to a 4mm hook, you need to do a new swatch with a 4mm hook, because the size of the crochet fabric you make with a 3mm hook is going to be different from the crochet fabric that you made with a 4mm hook. Okay, so once you've done your swatch, it means that you cannot change anything again. You cannot change the yarn and you cannot change the hook. Otherwise, the measurement you got for the swatch is going to be invalid. Okay, whatever hook size you want to use for your project is what you're going to use for the swatch, and whatever yarn you want to use for your project is what you're going to use for your swatch. If for any reason after doing your swatch you want to change things up, you need to do another swatch with the new hook size and with the new yarn. Okay, even if you started a project and you lose your hook, you cannot change your hook size in the middle of the project. Of course, the size of the project will change, because the bigger your hook, the bigger your crochet fabric will be. The smaller your hook, the smaller your crochet fabric will be. If you change your hook in the middle of the project to a bigger hook, your project is going to start getting bigger. And if you change your hook in the middle of the project to a smaller hook, your project is going to start getting smaller. Now, that might be your intention. So if you're intending for your project to get bigger, definitely change your hook to a bigger hook. And if you're intending for your crochet project to get smaller, definitely change your hook size to a smaller hook size. But if that's not your intention and you are just changing for the fun of it, trust me, your crochet project is going to be much bigger than you want it to be, even though you did a swatch and you had measurements to work with. Okay, that's the third reason. Now the fourth reason, this is like the simplest reason, and it's just that you don't cross-check what you're doing. And this is so important because it just helps you catch any errors quickly. The quicker you discover your mistake, the quicker you can fix it. I mean, if I discover that I've made a mistake 2 rows after I made the mistake, it is much easier than finishing my entire project and realizing that, oh my goodness, there was a mistake in row 2. That is such a bummer. And this is why I always cross-check what I'm doing. I measure my crochet fabric at regular intervals. I measure the beginning, I measure the end, I measure the length. I'm just measuring to make sure that this measurement is what I'm supposed to have, because remember that I have measurements that I'm working with, so I know what the fabric is supposed to measure. So when I'm taking the measurements, I'm able to compare to the measurements I already have. And if something is off, I can quickly change it before I go too far. You can also cross check in terms of stitch count, especially if you're new to crochet. Your stitch count can quickly go off if you're not very used to crochet yet and you're not going to realize. But for me, if my stitch count goes off, I'm going to realize because the shape of my fabric is going to start changing and I can quickly tell that something is wrong. But if you're new, you might not be able to tell that something is wrong immediately. So it's good for you to count your stitches at the end of every row just to make sure that everything is going as it is supposed to go. And of course, if you notice that things are not going well, it's time for you to rewind, look for where your mistake is, fix the mistake before you start going forward. These are 4 reasons why your crochet project can end up being bigger or being smaller than you want it to be. Now, I need to say, when you're making things like blankets or things where size is not so important, you can skip getting measurements, you can skip doing a swatch because you're like, no matter what size it comes out being, it's going to be fine. But when you are making clothing items, the sizing is so important because if the cloth does not fit well, you might not feel comfortable wearing it, and you're just so conscious. The fit of a clothing item is going to determine how nice it looks. So it is very important that your sizing is correct when you're making crochet clothes. And now is a very good time for me to tell you about my free webinar coming up. This webinar is titled Crocheting Beautiful Clothes, and in the webinar I'm going to be teaching you how to crochet beautiful clothes that fit perfectly. If you've ever made a crochet item that ended up too big, if you've been wondering how people make beautiful crochet clothes, if you've been wanting to make beautiful crochet clothes, this is the webinar for you. So click the link in the description box to read more about the webinar and get yourself enrolled. It's free. Just come learn all you need to learn so that you can also start crocheting beautiful clothes like me and my students. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button down below for more crochet videos like this one. And yeah, watch this other video next where I'm talking about how you can design your own unique crochet clothing item. All right, I'll see you in that video. Bye.